a woman which takes a short, hard look at men. Today's piece is by Eddie Woodbridge, and she's written it in the first person from a man's point of view. The story is called Ghost Writing, and is read by Mark Buffery.
I knew I'd made a mistake straight away. It was so dark and cold and, oh, so lonely. I could see me body hanging there from the mill hoist and drive me down just to get back into it, but for no good. Too late now to change my mind. It all started years back along, really. Of course, you won't remember the terrible floods of 1863. All over Somerset we was flooded for months on end, and folk was losing their lives nigh on every day. Our eldest lad drowned trying to rescue Billy, my old cart horse. Then the youngest maid were took with a consumption. All that, followed by 3 poor harvests in a row. And well, things just kept on going from bad to worse year after year. 'Twere then I took to drinking a drop too much, I suppose. I know different now, but when you've got a barrel of cider on tap, it's very hard not to keep on going, till you cheer up a little bit like. Only this particular day, the day I'm talking about, the more I drank, the more miserable I became. And that's when I hanged myself. I'll never forget the sight. My body hanging there, still swaying on the creaking chain, face all red and bloated looking, eyes wide open staring into the grey dusty space. Terrible sight it were. Terrible. Bess, my old sheepdog, were down in the doorway barking and whining, poor thing. Of course that brought the missus out to see what was wrong. Poor soul, she had a fright, I can tell 'ee. Went white as a sheet, she did, and almost fainted. I wanted to let her know I was still about. I called her by name and tried to put my arm round her, but 'twere no good. I couldn't get a hold of her, no matter how hard I tried. And all she could do was shiver and cry the more. Then, of course, there were a real performance. You've never seen nothing like it. They couldn't bury I in the churchyard, see, being as I'd done away with myself. That weren't allowed. So I ended up at the crossroads up by the turnpike. But our lad Harry got hold of a nice bit of hamstone and carved my initials and dates on it. J.A.L. 1824 to 1875, and set it up so I wouldn't be forgot. I don't suppose it means much to anyone these days, though that may change soon, thanks to things that have happened over the past few months. You mark my words. It was so frustrating, though, and lonely at first. You see, 'twere like I were still alive and could see folk, but they couldn't see me. Mind you, over the years, a few of them seemed to almost see me, and sort of peer in my direction, but not many. Most folk just give a little shiver and walk on a bit faster. I tried joining in with some of the lads who'd gone off from Milford to fight at Inkerman and never come back again, but I couldn't get across to them neither. They was always just out of reach, and I seemed to be stuck here, where I'd lived, man and boy, all my life. I felt so lonely. You've no idea. It seems so unfair. I mean, I'd paid me way regular as clockwork, kept the millstones ground proper, and always let the men off early on Christmas Eve with a few extra pence in their pockets. But just because I did away with myself instead of waiting me time, I were trapped here with no way out. I felt like I were a swirl of water going round and round in a little whirlpool, instead of making me way down the mill race into the river and on out to sea. I've seen some very interesting things, mind. Take lights, for instance. We thought we was so grand when we went from candles to oil lamps, but then folks went on to gas, and now 'tis all electric. All along the roadside, too, right through the night. And as for that thing they call the wireless, well, that were real magic. Though, to be honest, I could never see why 'twere called a wireless, not when it had all those wires come out the back. Nowadays, of course, 'tis all television, but I don't fancy that. Seems wrong to me, shrinking folk down small and putting them in boxes to turn them on and off whenever you fancy. Clever, but not right. And when it comes to that man on the moon nonsense, well, I just can't believe that. I mean, even if they put someone up there, how would they have gotten back down again? Load of nonsense, if you ask me. Mind you, life have had its funny moments now and again. Like the end of that there war against Hitler, for instance. Everyone were so excited. They had a great bonfire up on East Hill with a likeness of Hitler on top. Ooh, you should have heard the roar when he went up in flames. Folks was so excited. They was burning tar barrels and torches. The church bells was ringing like fury. And the vicar got drunk. I'd spotted him knocking back the communion wine early in the day. Good strong stuff it were, Alice Ford's best elderberry. I had to laugh. I mean, him always going on about honesty and abstinence. Though, to be fair, to a drink that were me downfall. So I shouldn't say too much, I suppose. Funny old life. But these days, things is very much better for me. See, like I said, there've always been a few who've seemed to almost sort of see me and understand. Charity Cooper's widow, for instance. She were a good soul. Help anyone, she would. I'd often see her on her way home from that library place of a Friday night. She always give a nod in my direction. But then she went blind and couldn't read no more. Terrible shame that were. I remember going by her little house one day, not many months before she died, and seeing her sitting out in the garden, her face up to the sun, just like the little pansies old Charlie put in a few years back along. She looked a bit sad and lonely, so I went and sat beside her for a while. Now, you might not believe this, but she knew I were there. She smiled and murmured, "Hello, Joshua. You still around then?" She knew, although she couldn't see. After that, I'd often pop in for a bit of company like. Sometimes her daughter Rebecca'd be there, and I'd stay and listen to them chatting. Oh, they were very interesting, you know, although they was only women. They go on about herbs and healing, weather lore and prophecy, all the old wisdom. Rebecca talked all about the books she'd read, and could put up a good argument for all the sort of things we used to do when I were a lad. You know, things like crop rotation, planting by the different phases of the moon, dowsing for water and so on. That were when I got the feeling that if I could make an effort to make myself known to Rebecca, perhaps she'd listen to me, be a bit of company like her mother was. And sure enough, it worked. It weren't until after her mother passed on, mind. One day, I looked in, and she was sitting there sorting out all the letters and bills and things that needed seeing to. She seemed so downhearted, I thought I'd have a few words with her, try and cheer her up a little bit. She had a pen in her hand, a green pen if I remember rightly, and the next thing I knew, she were writing down everything I said, word for word. Well, I tell you, 'twere a real miracle being able to get through to someone at long last. He made me feel all happy and warm and alive again. Been doing it for nigh on a year now, I have, 4 or 5 times a week. She'd seem to enjoy it just so much as I do. Her husband's dead against it, though. I could talk to her all day long if it weren't for him, miserable old devil. Always gone on about the house being cold, his shirts not ironed, his food not ready on the table when he gets home from work. Got really angry last week, he did, and started ranting on about how he'd be late for a meeting at the church. Very close they are these days, him and the vicar. Not that he's taken to going to church exactly, but he's always popping down for a chat, as he puts it. But Rebecca don't seem to care. She's too caught up with our conversations. Though I must admit they are a bit one-sided, if you see what I mean, with me doing all the talking. But she've taken down many a tale of mine, I can tell you. You ask her about the building of the church school, or the new Wesleyan chapel. I saw both them go up. That were when I were a child, mind. Oh, I remember the day the chapel were opened. I were 5 at the time, And we was churchgoers, really, but we all went along to have a little look-see. Not as good as our church, I thought. No coloured windows or candles or nothing. But there were a lot of folk there, and they took £7.16 in the collection. Now that were a lot of money in them days. Proper money too. Not all this decimal stuff they use now. And I've seen some historic sights since I done away with myself too. Like when that General Booth came to Milford to tell folks all about his Salvation Army. Big open-air meeting that were, down by the cross one Wednesday evening. Crowds of folk gathered to listen to him. They'd put up bunting in Wheathill Lane and Paddock Walk, and the band were there playing. Oh, 'twere a very grand affair. Not that it made any difference in the long run, mind. Nobody joined. Folks in Milford was either church or chapel. Then there were that time the glove factory burnt down. One bonfire night. Not so many years ago, that were. Everyone thought it was some lads throwing fireworks, but I know better. Oh, yes. I've told Rebecca all about that. Got it safely written down, she have. Ooh, there'll be some red faces in certain quarters when that gets out, I don't mind telling you. And it will. See, I heard her telling someone the other day that she was going to put all me stories in a book and get it published. I should be famous then. Just you mark my words. I tell you, 'tis marvellous these days. Life have never been better, if you get my meaning. Go all of the parish, I do. Then come back and tell Rebecca what I've seen. Weddings, funerals, wife-swapping parties. I go to all of them. You'd be surprised what goes on behind closed doors. 'Tis funny, though. No sooner do I turn up, that everyone starts shivering. And then they start fiddling around with that fancy new heating they got nowadays. Central heating, they call it. Not half so good as the proper fires we used to have. But there you are. They call it progress. But talking of progress, 'tisn't all bad. You should see Rebecca's new-fangled machine for writing words on. Like a television, but for writing. Much quicker than using a pen. She puts down everything I tell her. We're doing it again tonight, while her husband's gone down to see the vicar. It appears those two are very concerned about something terrible that's going on hereabouts. I haven't been to the church since I passed on. Gives me the shivers, something terrible. No, but I heard them talking on that telephone thing about, what a funny word it were, something. Exodus? No, exercise? No, not quite, but something like that, I don't know. Anyway, it seems the vicar's coming here tonight, in secret like. They haven't told Rebecca nothing about it, but as long as they leave some peace, I'm not bothered. Oh, I can see the vicar coming up the path right now. He's carrying a big black bag. Looks like he's coming for a holiday. But he can't be. Can he? Oh, we've got a lot of church stuff in it. His surplice and things. And a bell. A book. And a candle.
Ghostwriting was written by Eddie Woodbridge and read by Mark Buffrey. The producer in Bristol was Peter Everett, and tomorrow you can hear the last in the series of Women on Men, a story of marital discord